Thank you. It's an honor to be moderating such a panel. So I'll just begin with much has been discussed, and anyways, access to information is so we are all wise in terms of what is happening in the sector industry. Unfortunately, it's growing in front of us, but I'll just for the sake of repeating, I will just say a few introductory remarks. And there is no order in terms of the questions. While I have certain questions dedicated to the OEMs, it's an interesting panel. You have a mix of OEMs and auto component manufacturers and someone who's working very closely with the government in terms of EODB matters. So it's interesting mix. So we'll pick up those questions, and anyone who feels to pitch in, whether the question is directed to an OEM, but if you think the desire to pitch in an answer, please go ahead. After my introductory remark, just please spend a minute on what the organization does that you represent, followed by a general question on supply chain, which is how do you see the supply chain evolving, especially the issues with regard to the minerals, the costing of the raw material, the other elements, and maybe how that is, since we are anyway seeing the uptick in this particular segment. So how will that impact the margins in terms of going forward? So we anyways know that this particular segment that we're talking about, two-wheeler and essentially three-wheeler. If you look at some of the projections that we did ourselves, and there were certain other projections, so the 50% penetration by 2030. While I'll not vouch for the numbers which were done for 2050 by some of the analysts, but this says that 91% would be the penetration of two-wheeler, by 2050, and 93% would be three-wheeler, and by 2030 you'll have approximately 65% penetration or a share of three-wheelers in country, every new vehicle sold. So if you're looking at that number, so access to technology which can perform in the Indian market conditions is throwing up some challenges. And then you also have challenges with regard to the key value chain elements such as cells, magnets, right, semiconductors, which are growingly used in EV now. And which is now, add to this, you also have a challenge with respect to global supply chain bottleneck, which you've already seen post the surge in demand post-COVID era, where the lack of container availability or the chip shortage has anyways given rise to the prices in lithium and other elements. So whether you talk about this, what we feel is obviously, and what the government efforts are now, obviously, to localize much of it, and it's clearly the writing on the wall, right? Whether you talk about the Atmanirbhar plan, or you talk about the need for made for India products, or maybe creating a greater value over the entire supply chain, right? And further, if you see India's position, which is now gaining strength at the global diversification of manufacturing destination, and largely because of the various EODB efforts, industry coming together, pitching in, and also the various very lucrative incentive policies, both at the center level and at the state level, is promoting some of it in terms of India's arrival at the international stage, right, in terms of manufacturing destination. So if you look at this, while there are some short to mid-term challenges, which is low volume and high price input cost, but I guess coupled with some of the government decisions on the policy, soon that they will vanish. So we are going to discuss not only the challenges, but also in which pocket the various unlocks are available, right? So how can you make this happen? Whether it is with R&D, whether it is with EODB related matters, or in the supply chain, how do the entire ecosystem works together to create this particular, so that we can capture this particular sector, and the time is right. So So over to, there's no particular order. So Dev, you want to begin maybe a minute on the company that you represent, and then followed by your inputs on the supply story. How do you see the impact, particularly in the next 3 to 4 years, on the input prices, given this particular segment that you're talking about is growing?
Thank you very much, Puesh, and I thank TWF for having me on this panel. You summarized it very nicely that on the demand side, we are seeing an exponential growth, particularly on the two-wheeler and three-wheeler form factors. The whole electrification drive in India started in these two form factors, as we all know. And it started, I mean, the major driver was government. Government incentivized the demand by FAME 2 subsidy, etc. On the supply side, there are various incentives available, central level, state level, etc. And then the other, unfortunately, the way it started was through low-end Chinese imports in the country. And from there on, we are seeing, I mean, one was that. The second was the startups, you know, who actually got into it with their products, ideas, technologies, etc., and attracted investments, which is great. But I think now the inflection point has come, according to me, in two-wheeler and three-wheelers. Probably the commercial vehicle, the small commercial vehicle space of 1-ton pickup truck is probably the next one to be disrupted. But to support these kind of numbers, and the numbers vary, you know, as you said, anything from 30% going up to 80% plus. Honorable Minister has said that, you know, he doesn't want any petrol vehicles after 2026 and all. So to support that kind of supply chain, I think we will need a robust supply chain to support these numbers. And the robust supply chain, when I talk, I'm not talking only about the manufacturing part of it. See, Indian auto component industry has typically been a build-to-print kind of industry. So there are gaps, engineering, design, R&D, etc. So I think this is the opportunity, and with startups like we have Signy and several other brilliant guys coming up with their technologies. EV is that opportunity to really, you know, develop products, come up with the ideas, and scale up. And we are seeing a great ecosystem developing. These are early days, of course. It takes time to set up these kind of supply chain. Automotive is a very intensive industry where everything has to get together and work in sync. But my view is that, you know, Indian industry, entrepreneurs, technologists, R&D, academia, etc., have to come together and be part of this whole ecosystem and develop products right from scratch, zero-base design that we call, and not just adopt a you know, a retrofit approach, like you take out the engine, take out the gearbox, and fit the battery and motor, and it becomes an EV. I think the next phase, when we are talking about such huge numbers and the entire supply chain to support these numbers, will have to be backed by strong engineering and R&D. That's my view. And I would be happy to, you know, look forward to listening to my panelists' view on this. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead and just introduce yourself and maybe the organization a minute, and then.
Myself, Manav Kapoor from Steelbird. Just to add to what Mr. Mukherjee said, I mean, like, yes, the automotive industry in India has actually been very robust. I mean, even if you look at the ICE versus the electric vehicles, 70% of the vehicle is still the same. It's about 30% of the vehicle that needs to be changed. And that is where the R&D focus has to be put in. And looking at what a kind of incentives the government is giving right now, it's more on localization of those products which are not there in India. So I think we are heading in the right direction with the government incentives kind of facilitating the R&D towards it. And sooner or later, I think it will be very specific. The government will focus on, okay, this is what you need to do to localize completely the vehicle into India, like the internal combustion engine vehicles are today. They're probably 99% localized. And I think that will happen. Yes, there are a lot of issues right now with respect to the raw material prices and all this, but these, what I feel is these are like short-term issues, and these are operational issues, and which will be dealt with time. And it's a teething issue, I'll say, with respect to the industry, because this is a new industry. It's not that we could replicate from somewhere else outside the world. Like ICE engines, we could replicate out from Japan, from Germany, or somewhere. But this, by and large, the entire technology it's nascent.
Fairly new.
It's very nascent. So
Yeah.
that's why it might appear to you it's a very rugged way to go ahead. But yes, given the engineering mindsets of the Indians, we will definitely make a mark there.
Sure. Venkat, your thoughts on this?
Thank you. My name is Venkat Rajaraman, founder CEO of Signi Energy. We are a company singularly focused on energy storage. So all the things that I'm going to be talking about will be a battery-centric talk. We are setting up our gigafactory, in the state of Telangana, and we have powered about 100,000 vehicles, EVs, and about 125 megawatt hour in energy storage space. I think there are 2 points. I'm sure there are a lot of discussions that are going to happen. I just want to add, 2 points. One, many of us know about this Moore's law, right? Every 18 months, your transistor capacity doubles in a semiconductor. Many of you may not know there is also a Wright's law, W-R-I-G-H-T. This Wright's law states that every time when there is a production capacity doubling, your cost comes down by a certain percentage. For lithium-ion battery, they have proven that for the last more than a decade or so, this has been falling in that cost curve, all the way from $1,000 per kilowatt hour to anywhere $120, $140 now. So clearly, there is a cost curve that we have been following, and there have been recent supply chain fluctuations that I think Bhuvesh talked about in terms of China, in terms of container non-availability, and so on and so forth. But if you look at it globally, the plan is that the number is anywhere between 2,400 to 3,000 gigawatt hour of global lithium-ion manufacturing production. India is at a very small scale still. We are still talking about a 50 gigawatt hour. But the plan is today we are at about 600 to 700 gigawatt hour, depending on which facility you take a look at. This is going to grow 5 times, right? In the next maybe 8 years. So if you were to go back to the Wright's law, you have to bound to see a reduction in the cost. So if I were to look at it 3, 5, 7 years down the line, I'm pretty sure that's the curve that we are going to go. But of course, there has been a lot of recent challenges that we are all grappling with. I'll leave that in the middle.
Sure.
Good afternoon. I'm Umesh Balani from Rotomotive. Rotomotive is an Italian joint venture company. It's part of Rotomac Group, which has been a unique company in the sense that it's the only company possibly in India which has made more than 1 million motors, permanent magnet motors, since last 20 years and has been supplying to battery operated equipment manufacturers in Europe and US. We have a deep knowledge on various motor technologies like BLDC, PMSM, induction, as well as permanent magnet synchronous motors. While the emergence of EV market in India would be supported by the OEM suppliers, by the component suppliers, one key element, that is the drive system and the motor and the smart electronics and the powertrain associated with that, is something which India does not have experience in at the moment. The development of vendors for these kind of equipment has been hampered because India has allowed cheap imports from China. Maybe that was a good strategy to get scale quickly, but I believe with right government intervention and support, India could become a big hub for manufacture of these kind of components also. There is a challenge, but of course, therein lies the opportunity.
So supply
Yeah,
chain
Janendra.
continues, right?
Yeah. So about the company, and then it's a known name, so you want to brief?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Janendra Anand. I represent LML Scooters. almost 50 years old company, so a traditional ICE engine company. More than 5 million scooters already sold, but now last year we decided that we'll work only in electric space. The reason could be many. The reason have been shared by many of my fellow panelists. Why electric? Why EV? Before that, on the lighter side, if you look at, Sir shared that government is giving a big drive towards EV. I hope each one of us is an Indian here, and we, until unless pushed, we generally don't do the work. So which is whether it's our child, it's our professional colleagues, it's any of our relation, we need to be pushed. So that is why government is giving a big push to the EV. The basic reason behind that is the rising fuel prices. I mean, to support the dollar outflow, which we gave billions and billions of dollars to all the countries, especially the oil producing and exporting countries, that has to be controlled. That was the basis of why EV started, EV flow started. Now the good thing is, initial euphoria of Chinese copy paste or just tightening the screws or just reassembling the product is over now. Most of the OEMs have started building their own technology. How does the initial EV starts? You know, it starts with a concept. When somebody has in mind, okay, I'll make an EV. Then you come to a design stage. So do we have good designers in India? I'm pretty confident. Even we have some good friends sitting over here who are designing some beautiful vehicles, not only for EV, for any kind of vehicle. Do we have part suppliers? Yes, we do have part suppliers. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very honored and privileged that entire product can be localized in India. You don't need, leave aside the lithium ion cells, that is also being done by some company in India. You don't need to buy directly anything from China or anywhere across the world. Everything is available in India. Of course, certain, semiconductors, some chips and all, which is a global scarcity. I still remember that a part costing me $2. I purchased it for $56. So 28 times I paid the premium to get that part so that I can make my vehicle and roll out and I do not keep my consumer waiting. But the good thing is those things have come down. Those are easily available. We are talking about the motor, transmission, energy, all the vehicles availability. Of course, gentleman from the helmet, I mean, he's one of the very leading brand in India. Everything is available. What do you need from outside? Of course, the suppliers, the component manufacturers need to scale up. Because currently, if most of us are aware, but still I'm repeating, we are making close to 17 lakhs two-wheelers every month. This demand will go up during the festival season, which is somewhere in October or November during Diwali. Previous average was close to 15 lakhs, but again, we have started hitting 17 lakhs. Even if we talk about 30% by 2025, how much is it? Simple mathematics, 5.1 lakhs, round figure 5 lakhs. EVs every month, in two-wheeler I'm talking about, not in three-wheeler or any other category. 5 lakh two-wheelers per month is going to be the demand as being pushed by the government of India. So my request to all the design houses, to the component suppliers, to the manufacturers, to the motor, the powertrain, the ECU, the VCU, the mainframes, the wiring harness, to the charger ecosystem, everything to all of you is be prepared for the kind of thrust that is going to come here as far as the demand is concerned. Today, don't go by today what numbers are. Today numbers are, as per the Vahan data, is 52, 53, 54,000 a month. Don't go by that. Actual number is much above that. Because certain states are not Vahan, so they are doing around 60 to 65,000. High speed I'm talking about. Equal number is low speed. As far as component manufacturer is concerned, 80% to you, it does not matter whether it's a high speed or a low speed scooter. Leave aside some motor traction or power and all those things. So just be prepared. By the end of this year, you will find we are hitting more than 100,000 numbers a month. And this journey is going to go like this, then only you will going to hit 5 lakhs. But only thing one needs to be cautious is that what we as an OEMs are representing, and maybe as a component manufacturers or as other fellow colleagues from OEM industries can also represent, there should be little more clarity as far as the policies which are being framed by the various government agencies. Because I'm sure many of us are, or most of us are aware that new policies, guidelines are becoming effective 1st of October, especially for the battery purpose. I'm sure many of us are aware that.
So Jennifer, we'll come back to that on a separate, on the ADOB part.
Okay. So just concluding that, my only point of view here was, India as a growing country, as a supply chain industry, we are doing exceedingly well. So my request to all my colleagues who are sitting here, Please continue to do well. We as an OEM are looking forward to only Indian suppliers, whether it's motor, whether it's controller, whether it's ECU, VCU, anything for that matter. We are looking at only Indian suppliers. Thank you so much.
So Abhijit, we have been talking about China plus one strategy, right? So, and you've been working very closely with the government on, engaging as program director for NHEV. So what is your thought on China plus one strategy in terms of the EUDB? The government recently released the logistic policy. What needs to be done on the infrastructure side, labor laws? So what are your thoughts on it in terms of?
Lot of stuff you have thrown into my tray. Let me summarize if I can pick up all of them. So hi, good afternoon. I'm Abhijit. I head Ease of Doing Business piloting division of emerging tech. And when it comes to piloting of emerging tech, you know how difficult it is. And obviously I'm speaking in the last is because in the ecosystem also I come last. When you complete everything, it has to be delivered to somebody. It has to be delivered to an user or maybe to marketer, to financiers, or to be someone who is going to adopt it and regulator. Or
By the way, you decided to let the mic go to Manav,
Yeah.
because I started with extreme right.
So I started my journey throughout with pilots. I have done pilots of integrated management of critical childhood illness, which is now known as Asha Anganwadi workers. I have done pilot of UIDAI, Aadhaar, which is now popularly known as Aadhaar. So once upon a time, most of these pilots, currently also I'm in additional charge of Delhi, Jaipur and Delhi, Agra electric highway. And many of these pilots are to an extent, sometime we say, they're very difficult to bring them on ground until and unless you have understanding of complete ecosystem. And if you are fumbling at any of the juncture, it sometimes becomes unviable, sometimes technically very difficult to achieve. So look at the ecosystem, because most of the people who are there with me is a very esteemed co-panelist, and obviously all of you who is there in this hall, you all belong to certain different type of industry and trying to deliver something which is more sustainable, more greener and more cleaner. So how do we implement this and how do we put this on ground? It requires three basic requirements. One, standards, specifications, and certification need to be very sorted and very clear, so that industry does not need to go around and feel threatened or pressurized that how much time we have with this standard and when something new will happen and standards will change. And second, financing. Emerging techs are very difficult for financing industry. I come from a banking industry like you. I left my job in 2013 and started working for Citizen for Accountable Governance in Gujarat. And then from there, when our Honorable CM became Prime Minister, we started working on the ease of doing business. So at this stage of time, when you look at any ecosystem delivery, you will need to have a very thorough look of your own economy. Our economy was in 1947, it was based on the agricultural economy. Later, we become some thrust on the manufacturing side. We turned out to be a product economy. But when I'm adding one to the economy of India, I'm not leaving the other one behind. We are still a cultural economy, agricultural economy, added with product economy, then we become a service economy. When you have skilled manpower, you are sending manpower to different part of globe, you become a service economy. But right now at this stage of time, we are very soon going to become a tech economy. And when you are becoming a technology economy, your focus should be on the delivery of the ecosystem. And the delivery of ecosystem requires, whenever you have new technologies which are part of that ecosystem, you will not have policies, you will not have standards, you will not have regulations, you will not have clear thought to give to insurance company, bank companies, even you will not have confidence of the user who is going to adopt that technology. This is a place where I think electric mobility comes in. My thought process about the journey which we had into electric mobility was completely different. I stepped into it in 2018-19 with a very clear mandate and understanding that where do we stuck? And most of you, I'm remembering few of the conferences in 2018, said one thing, sir, there is no infrastructure. There is no charging infrastructure. We cannot compare a diesel car or petrol car with electric car. And until and unless we do not have the infrastructure, the industry is going to suffer like in two circles. So when you have to go on the infrastructure side, the first thing which government had to clear was what are the papers required for setting up a charging station. Ease of doing business starts from there. And when you have a government like headed by Honorable Prime Minister Modi, you have a government of reform, perform and transform. Government outrightly into a discussion of not more than January to March 2018, given a clarification there is no license or there is no paper required for setting up a charging station. Now, where do we stand when government clearly says there is no license required in this country where PCO ka booth chalana used to be a business sometime, and you have a bigger margin into charging station, and nobody in the country is going and applying for new charging station. Government is still the biggest buyer in the EV industry, be it bus, be it charger, be it the ecosystem, or other R&D subsidies. I do not want to name all of them. I felt that there is a requirement to educate people, to bring this bold reform of Government of India in your pocket. The way you look at petrol pump, you should look at charging station. So we did not started with this city ecosystem. However, now some pilots has been commissioned and it is under process with city ecosystem. We started with highways to make a charging station and petrol pumps equally visible, very efficient and very defined in terms of standard specification, micro level detailing, so that the way you are getting a license for petrol pump today, you have an architecture company ready to do a setup within 3 days. Because if you are not doing setup and you are not starting the vending, it is your loss. 4 days, 5 days, 20 days, how much you want to spend on making a Taj Mahal, it depends on you. But if you start vending, it is your profit, and your architect knows everything. Gas tank kahan lagna hai, shed kaisa banega, curve kaisa hoga, pipe kaisa hoga, connector kaisa hoga, everything is defined. Why not into charging station? So we stepped into it for making charging station. Its results I will tell you later. Second, who will finance? I started connecting with global agencies in 2018, and I always used to meet fancy people into fancy conferences who say there are a lot of finance for electric green mobility. When somebody actually have to do a setup, they go to bank. There are very few bank who were very clear about financing EV infrastructure. EV as a vehicle, it is very easy to finance. But glad to have Yes Bank on the dais, so I do not need to name. They have been very
So we'll
confident.
talk about the market creation later, Abhijit.
Right.
Hence, you spoke about the AODV piece, and coming back to all of you can take it.
I will not tell you the results, but two more things they need to know. Is one, the standard and the layout of a station was not known to anyone. Petrol pump, everybody knows. Finance kaun karega, it was not known to anyone. Now, through annuity hybrid e-mobility, at least people know how to finance highway infrastructure. Third and very most important, last thing is, you do not know how much you are going to earn from a charging station. You very well know how much you are going to earn from a petrol pump. In 24 months, entire infrastructure of a petrol pump comes to your pocket. It reaches to break even. But in charging station, nobody knows. First time we did the pilot, and we brought out that it is 36 to 40 months to reach for a charging station, for a charging station capex to reach to its infrastructure. Results I will tell you on other rounds. Any important part which must be known to all of you is, standards are something which you need to decide in a way where delivery of the product, confidence, financier, your investors are not getting hampered. And it will only be possible if it is not a forum to speak about the fire or safety or particularly battery, but technology has all solutions. If we are not using technology which can give confidence and solution, then it might be a different type of debate. But recently, in the very nascent fire stage, which happened, was I recommended a black box feature into a battery, so that whenever there is a fire incidents happen, a new regulation should not be introduced.
So we'll ask more. We'll come back to those on the questions in terms of So this is particularly to Signy and Rotomac, and so is the industry really moving towards the standardization? Is that the way forward, at least in the segment that we're talking about, or it'll be at the component level? which will make you very competitive?
Yeah, let me take this question first. And yeah, I definitely see that it is moving towards standardization. If you were to see in the last, if I were to speak from a energy storage industry perspective, about 3 months back, BIS came up with the lithium-ion testing standard, I think, which I thought was one of the testing standard which sort of went far and above than what currently our standards specify. And about 2 months back, BE came up with a star rating program for the battery packs. Most recently is the Marth, which came up with the AAS 156 Rev 2 amendments. I think the whole industry is is almost on fire with shaken with that. And if you look at these standardization, they are all absolutely the steps in the right direction. Now they are talking about battery packs having for example the black box feature in some which way, right? Talking about battery pack having a pressure relief valve. We want to have an end-to-end data which needs to be sort of stored. Very many features which are happening. So in short, if I were to see, I think is this sufficient? I would not say that, but for a nascent industry like what we are going through, these are absolutely steps in the right direction.
Yes. Venkat spoke from the perspective of energy storage and batteries. Yes, of course, you need to standardize because then there is a possibility of swapping also. So the industry does need absolute standardization there. But when it comes to powertrain, there could be possibly a contrary view because the vehicle manufacturers, the OEMs would like this element to bring in the differentiation. LML will say that for a particular vehicle, they may use a 5 kilowatt powertrain. Somebody else would say 3 kilowatt. There will be different acceleration levels. And depending on the segments that they serve, there would be a great deal of differentiation and customization which would happen. Yes, we do need standards for even the most customized products. There are quality standards and so on. So the country does need quality standards. Unfortunately, enough know-how at the moment doesn't exist to arrive at a consensus on the quality standards. There's a lot of work which needs to be done. But as the demand for the products, and we are already seeing that from, let's say 2-3 basic varieties, you have, let's say, two-wheelers for different segments, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, commercial vehicles emerging for different kind of applications and segments. So the demand for new kind of products in terms of powertrains, in terms of differentials, axles, and so on, would emerge, and this would call for differentiated products, not necessarily standardized across products.
So Manav, you spoke about 70% being the same, and I may, not as a panelist but as a moderator, I may differ on your first statement where you said that 60% remains to be is in other parlance called a chronicle waste, where no innovation is required. And I'm sure you're talking about the chassis, the lightweighting and other aspects, right? Where equal amount of work needs to be done, right? So just a question, which is, would the localization of the entire localization drive, will this make us competitive at the export level, at the international stage?
Absolutely. See, when it comes to what I meant by saying 70% of the vehicle is still the same, is like we have an experience of decades of manufacturing those components. For example, if I'm talking about, say, rubber or plastic molding or, let's say, a shock absorber. So these are not products which were not there earlier. So there is already a lot of history to it. There's a lot of experience to it. A lot of manufacturers in India have been doing it for donkey years. So they have a good understanding of the product very well. So if we have to develop a product which is more specific to the electric vehicle, then there's a lot of learning which we already have. So it makes it a lot easier. Whereas when we go to the rest of the 30% of the vehicle, which is actually absolutely new, there's nothing been tried that before. So the learning is very different. The learning curve is we are in a very early stage in the learning curve, whereas for the other components, we are in a very advanced stage of the learning curve. So that's what I meant by saying, 70% of the vehicle, we do have an understanding of the vehicle very well. For example, LML has been manufacturing scooters for so many years. Sure. So they know the scooter very well. Only thing they need to change is the powertrain. I mean, like rest of the things, they know it. So that's what I meant by, having an experience and 70% the same.
So coming back to Dev and Janendra, in terms of OSM, as I understand, you have largely looked at in-house production, right? So LML is maybe looking at contract manufacturing. So how do you arrive at these decisions in terms of the scale, the product development?
You want me to answer
Yeah.
that? Okay. See, in case of EVs, obviously every OEM, every company will plot its own trajectory, its own make versus buy strategy, technology strategy, et cetera, and also the appetite they have on the financing side, etc. The way I see it is as our company, Omega Seki, we are right from beginning, we had this vision that first we will make everything in India. Of course, sales and all, our good friend, they are now coming up, and I'm sure, that also will be sorted out. And secondly, our vision was that we will be a global company. So we, right from beginning, we plotted it that way. Today, my vehicles are running in Egypt, in Turkey, in Africa, Bangladesh, etc. Three-wheelers. And our trucks are now under trial in UAE, which is a highly, high quality, very demanding market. So I think that's our strategy. And to achieve this, we found that there is a gap today because it's a new industry coming up, and several mainstream players are not yet there. Tier ones are also waiting, watching, or whatever. We decided that on the technology robustness side, technology infusion side, it will be prudent for us to have our own powertrain manufacturing. So we did a JV with a Korean partner, and we will start our own powertrain manufacturing. So that gives us the control on supply chain. That is one. The control on the technology, IP, etc. And secondly, I can achieve the scale. I know my numbers for next 5 years, etc. So this is how I think the industry has to plot its own trajectory. It will be a combination of, obviously, maybe 2 years, 3 years down the line, we will not be talking about this shortage of suppliers, etc. We may be talking about something else probably. But I just want to say that, looking at the numbers and the whole adoption of EV, the demand side is all sorted out. I mean, there is no problem. On the supply side, of course, the supply chain has to be set up, various tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and the technology, etc. So I think it's a great opportunity. And also, I will just like to add to the point was made on the export of auto component side. I think it's a huge opportunity. Also, auto component industry today, our exports are somewhere around $15 to $20 billion. I mean, last we did 19 billion. Ironically, the imports also went high. So the point I'm making is, out of this 19 billion, almost 60% of the commodities fall in the engine and powertrain commodity. So we are staring at a big problem because, next 10 years, they are going to be obsolete. There is no market. So the component industry has to really develop these the EV products and really take this lead to become a global player. This is an opportunity not only for India. India, of course, the domestic market will definitely be there. But on the global scale, where, we sort of miss the bus in IC, I think this is a huge opportunity for the industry to really take the initiative.
Yeah, very well said, sir. As far as the exports is concerned, it's a huge opportunity for the EV industry. Just to add on to that, LML was earlier traditionally exporting to 60 plus countries and one of the most premium company in demand in Europe and US markets. So just by the virtue of our announcement of coming in EV market and with a unique design and a unique concept, and of course, every company has its own USPs, we have already, huge demand from many countries, especially the western part of the world. Of course, our countries are also joining hands with us. So this is very well said. It is very good opportunity. Now it is up to us to live up to the expectations of the consumer, the customer, the dealer, the entire value chain. Also adding on to that, I'm also happy to note that the traditional component manufacturing companies are now also venturing into something related to EV. Maybe it's motors, maybe it's controllers, or maybe it's anything concerning to powertrain, which is something very encouraging because they have started understanding the potential of EV. Third thing, you talked about the having a contract manufacturing. See, we tied up with the existing factory of Harley Davidson, which is they vacated when they went to Thailand. So it's a state-of-the-art factory. So to get that kind of a factory in such a short time was almost practically impossible for us. So we were very fortunate that we have signed up a long-term contract with them. Of course, all the quality controls, all the R&D, all the component, everything is going to be done by LML only. It's only a question of just the manufacturing part which we are doing at a third-party location. But as far as the ramp-up is concerned, yes, that facility has a capacity to go up to 5 lakh units a year, so which is a very huge capacity that we have got. And fortunately, they have such a series of plant. Harley was a very, having a great foresight that India is going to be a hub at some point of time. The reason could be any, they are out of India, but they had a very big foresight. So now, basis that, the manufacturing facility is available in India, and we are also very fortunate that we have tied up with most of the auto components that are required. So adding on to Sir's 70% and 30% thing, I mean, almost 1,500 parts plus go into any two-wheeler IC engine. Complete IC I'm talking about. But if you talk about EV, just 250 parts go. So the competition is tough. The number of parts have been reduced. So my only thing is that we have to gear up and support that what kind of parts are available in India, because we are now matching the global market. Thank you.
I would try to cover at least two of where we left. Standards and pricing. Standards are something which should be very clear. We all understand, we all agree to it, but how to achieve it? Standards should not let industry look back. It should always be forward-looking standards. And standards are quite important for pricing also. If you are not holding standard which is convincing all your stakeholder, your pricing goes for a toss. And without having all of them in same confidence level, it is difficult to roll out a standard. So my take on a standard is to bring those ecosystems where industry goes one step ahead from the standards. Standards is something which you must comply to sell. But there should be product in the market which is above the standard. Without standard, you will not be able to sell. But scenario, unfortunately, here in India is different. A lot of product which we have found without standards sold, and somehow regulatory or administrative, many framework which went on the toss. It came back to those people when there were incidences. Now standards increased. Two things nobody can guarantee in this hall is standard would not increase further, and second, fire incidences would not happen. It's a part of parcel. It will happen, and it has happened in all countries where these type of development or these type of ecosystem has gone from a nascent stage to a developed stage. How can we actually make sure that these standards do not make the industry development hamper? I have one very crisp solution. Try to understand, paying full attention, because it's a bit difficult. It is under pilot right now. There are behavioral standards. Currently, we have physical standards. If you comply this particular product, you get it tested, sell it. Something someday happens, we will put a investigation. After 6 to 8 months, results will come out. And then you will get to know whose fault was this, whether it was a wire, whether it was a fuse, whether it was a battery or a design or anything. जब तक result नहीं आए, जब तक उसकी investigation की report नहीं आई है, everyone is on a stake. Everyone is talking some of the other direction. Behavioral standards means batteries and the vehicle need to be connected with an ecosystem. It may have its own ecosystem to record data inside it, or sometime it can relay on the cloud also. When incidents happen, these data are retrieved and actual reason of fault can be procured. Sometimes these faults do not happen on a fatal stage in one go. Sometimes you will have the heat up, then battery melting, battery heating up, sparkling, and then it will reach to a fire stage. Before that, if some segment is picked up, then all batches can be pulled out so that no casualty. You are happy, have very well defined whose fault it was, and rest entire industry remains on the same standard. These behavioral standards will always be based on the data of heat spectrum yesterday, day before yesterday, 4 days, 5 days, and it can be very easily analyzed by a eSIM, which cost how much? 900 rupees per annum, or extent if you go 2 SIMs, then it will cost you around 2000 rupees per annum services. And the small black box which can be saved, Ola and Ether, couple of companies who have the cloud connectivity also. But I think that's not the fair and transparent way, because something happens, you should have a regulator mode into it. So this is behavioral standard which can pull out each and every faulty battery before accident happens. And your focus, penalty, no, whatever government wish to do, regulator wish to do it with that particular person or particular product whose fault is this, not within the industry. Industry may go one step ahead. And second, which is very important, is pricing. Many of us have heard that petrol vehicle and electric vehicle price will become equal, maybe less than that. What is the difference between petrol and electric vehicle? On an consensus, what we should consider here, 15, 20, 30%? How pricey petrol vehicle and electric vehicle is? Electric is how much more than petrol?
I think may not be a right comparison.
There will not be consensus, but range-wise,
You need to compare the entire
30%, I can say. 30% the electric vehicles are pricey than the petrol one. Am I right?
I think this is not the right forum or the right comparison, because the range differs from 30% to almost 100%.
30% to 50?
To 100%.
100%. It
Yes.
may be
So that's
sometime.
what I'm trying to say, is not the right thing to compare at this
And
point
it
of
may
time.
not be the right comparison.
Right. So
anyways,
we are
moving
just
on to
taking
the
vehicles.
so moving on to the next part, I'll come back to you.
Right.
So we spoke about the localization, supply chain issues. Are we competitive enough to be performing at the export level? But for all this to come together, there has to be continuous investment in the R&D, right? And what we lack as a nation is, obviously there is not many efforts in the area of indigenous technology or IP creation, right? And the segments that you represent, all of us, right, as an industry. So is brownfield or groundfield, what is the right way to move forward? Suggest any 3 areas. I'll begin with you, Umesh. I think you have to.
Yes, the heart of a EV, again, I say, is a battery and, of course, something that moves it, which is a powertrain. It's like an engine of a IC engine vehicle. India has been making motors since last 100 years at least, but you don't see a single motor manufacturer in forums like this. They do not understand this space. There is nobody, not a single authority on motors for EVs in this country. Yes, IITs and professors are there. They do R&D and they do work, useful work, basic research and so on. But you ask them to, let us say, make a motor for, let's say, a very high performance car, I don't think that know-how and the technology exists in the country. On other hand, you have e-rickshaws which are made in lakhs now. The drivetrain is imported from China, and Indian manufacturers are not able to compete on the price end of a low-end product. So you have this whole challenge at both ends. The simple way out is, you ask me whether it should be greenfield or brownfield. The know-how and the technology exists in the Western world. India should be open, Indian manufacturers should be open, there have to be collaborations. So you have the Western world, because this kind of a market doesn't exist in the Western world. China is a closed market for them. India is an open market. Indian products will be more sophisticated, Indian products will be more robust, and there'll be a wide variety of Indian products. Indian products would find market in Africa, Latin America, etc., which probably would demand more sophisticated and robust products. So the Western world is going to be interested in the Indian market and would contribute the basic know-how. Startups and the professors can, of course, dovetail in, but it's the industry and companies like LML, etc., the OEMs, who have to take a lead and say, Let's work on these kind of products. Let's bring in the know-how from the Western world, dovetail it with Indian startups, and get the right products off the ground.
I think very, very well articulated. This is actually the need of the hour also. Just to tell the entire audience which is sitting here, we as a OEM are collaborating with two startups who are working on some different kind of technology, so that the USP of my product is little different from the other offerings that are there. So we are already doing that, sir. So I take it as a good positive step by LML as a company. Because this startup is again the ITNs, youngsters, willing to go that extra mile, work 24 hours a day, collaborate with us, understand what we want and working accordingly. Of course, along with my CTOs and my R&D heads and my other people who are working along with them. So at least we have started this. I'm not saying that we are at a matured state, but we have started this. But another good thing, in addition to the powertrain that we talk about, is basically EV is something mixture of a smartphone and a ICE engine. It's a smartphone which is running on the road. So the kind of intelligence and telematics in India is available, I think is better than anybody else globally. So last 2 days, I was talking to some XYZ telematics companies, and the kind of solutions they are providing. They are talking about the predictive maintenance now, including the mechanical parts. I mean, they have gone up to that much road ahead. They talk about that much of sophistication in your vehicle. Can you just imagine your vehicle is running on the road, and then your app tells you now, please, there is some workshop, some location, some infrastructure available. This particular parts need some kind of a checkup. So this is something very different thing is evolving in EV. And of course, it is evolving. You will see every day there is something new which is being announced, coming up, going to come up. So in next 2 years or so, you will see a phenomenal change in terms of technology, in terms of approach, in terms of adoption. Because now I see the place where I live in South Delhi, somewhere here near only, there are, in a colony, there are 10 EV showrooms. Small, big, leave that aside. So the people are now adapting this technology, and the onus lies on the OEMs and of course all the component manufacturers to also work along joint hands and develop that technology which meets all the, somebody said, standards. Pricing is not an issue because there is a customer who is available for each and every price segment. Even 30,000 रुपए का last mile delivery वाला vehicle भी बिकता है and 2 lakh का भी EV भी बिकता है. So there's nothing of that sort. It's a value proposition that you're going to bring on the table. Thank you.
Your thoughts on
Yeah,
this?
yeah. Let me speak from I think the greenfield versus brownfield for energy storage. I think the fact of the matter is, India, we do not have the cell technology, right? I think that's clearly not there. We may be having that in bits and pieces. That's why if you look at many major folks who have sort of participating, they are all sort of going in for a tie-up, right? Exide is going with the Leclanche, Lucas TV is going with 24M, Toshiba, Denso, and Suzuki are having their battery plant. So initially, I would imagine that it is going to go with a partnership approach because I think important for us to know that we are at least 5 or 7 years behind, if not slightly more, in terms of the technology. Having said that, I also believe that I think our process is going to be gradual. I don't think we would be doing fundamental sort of cathode manufacturing, or I would imagine that we would first start with assembly of all the cathodes, anodes, maybe separators and terminals with enclosures, and then put that, and then maybe we also have large graphite. India is both graphite and aluminum. We are largest one. So we would start doing those graphite based on anodes, and then maybe aluminum and so on and so forth, and then move towards that. Coming back to localization, I'm clearly seeing that I think even as part of the policy mandate, we are talking about a 25% localization in the first 2 years under the ACC-PLI scheme, and then 60% localization in the next 5 years. I believe that also would happen. So it's going to be, that is the approach that would happen, in the case of, energy storage and cell.
One of your thoughts?
Yeah, so just to add to what Mr. Anand was saying earlier. So, I mean, like this, as he mentioned about telematics. So, how we looked at the EV space and the newer technologies coming in. So we saw that telematics is going to be a major chunk of the automotive vehicles in future. And we looked at how the vehicles kind of communicating with the world. And we've actually, at Steelbird, we've actually partnered with an Israel-based company who does cybersecurity for automotive applications. So we are coming from we as a brand stand for safety of the rider. So safety does not limit to physical injury anymore. So it comes beyond that, and we could actually think out of the box and see how do we make vehicle more secure and safe. And that's where we found out the vehicles could be hacked in future. And they could be used as a weapon, and they'll be driving by themselves somehow, somewhere in there. So how do you control that? That's how we make the vehicle safe, and we found a solution for that, and that's how we bring that solution to India. So we, as component manufacturers, I would recommend everyone not to look only towards the hardware, to look into software as well.
So Dev, coming to you, while good to hear all this, but where is this money? Who's pumping in the money in technology, right? So whether you get it from outside, some value addition has to happen here, right? So who's creating or giving that money, doling out that money in that creation, whether it's an OEM or not? It's a happy story that is being portrayed, but in my opinion, who's getting that money for you to scale or leverage that technology that you have brought from outside? Because Indian market conditions are fairly different, right? So it's just not about tweaking a technology, but creating a patent out of the technology that you have brought in, or maybe learning from it and then getting a technology which would mature. So who has the capacity to invest that 5 to 7 years of money, pumping in that money, OEM auto components? Where will this money come from?
No, I think it's a big dollar game that we all understand. Automotive being a serious business, whether it is OEMs or suppliers who want to be serious players in this, they have to have that kind of appetite, that kind of access to investments, etc. Other than that, the people have a trading model. You buy from China or sell, so that's different, But the OEMs or serious suppliers, etc., they will have to invest. So that is first thing, So and the gestation period, the ROIs, etc., will come in over a period of time. But as I said, the good thing is the demand side is pretty much secure. So you are not actually fighting for, demand.
The problem is, that you have many competitive technologies competing at it in the same time, right? Which was not the case when probably the lithium was getting developed, right? So now you have many competitors. So where to invest and what to invest and how much to invest is the question, right? So while brownfield seems to be an easy answer, but something which is indigenous, maybe Abhijit, anything from the government side in terms of any thought process that the government has on how do they kind of develop the R&D ecosystem in India, which supports the entire growth?
I think government has already made its mandate and its thought process vision very clear that we are going to give you vehicles which will be equally priced. And how to get it equally priced, the discussion may take some more time. We'll save that discussion for some other time, but we can definitely look at one thing very clearly, is the future of mobility is not going to remain same. It used to be product driven. It is very fast going to be service driven. So future of mobility, I can say, is going to be service, and electric mobility altogether. When we look at electric mobility, it does not look like in a standalone product. It has a relationship with the charger, it has a relationship with the ecosystem, then now telematic, then connected vehicle, then driverless vehicle. So all these are coming up, they are on the cards. And when you are getting it done, when you are delivering it, then people are more interested to take that a very robust ecosystem for an hour or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days, rather than buying the entire ecosystem. So if you look at most expensive infrastructure in India, then that is metro. Metro reaches to its break even into 8.5 years. Electric mobility break even is 40-45 years if the average utilization of charger is 3 to 5%, which used to be a case for many years. Now, when we are delivering into such different ecosystem, when I said in the last turn that 36 to 40 months. So 36 to 40 months for a charging station to reach to break even is a good infrastructure investment. And when these type of infrastructure are holding both four-wheeler, three-wheeler, two-wheeler in the ecosystem, and also doing and acting as a cargo hub for 50-kilometer area around the station, which is on highway, then it is a win-win situation for local people who do not buy anything. Still units are getting sold, still people are using it, but these are the delivery vehicles. Once you develop that certain level of confidence, which we are trying to give on highways, that you do not buy, still you can take a vehicle which you used to take Swift Desire or maybe Toyota Innova. Cheaper price, better facilities, more certainty, a better business, and service-wise it is very high. If you shut down with a diesel vehicle, I don't know how much time it will take to reach a backup or technical backup. But if you shut down with an electric vehicle on e-highway, within 30 minutes your backup with a battery and connector arrives. So these kind of ecosystem is only possible with connected vehicle, who are connected and who are sharing their continuous data with the stations, who are capable to give a roadside assistant 35-kilometer right and 35-kilometer left.
Maybe some of the things that government can also look at is maybe a joint R&D fund where some of the risk is also shared, right? So this is one of the things which comes to my mind.
Yeah,
in
it
terms
is.
of taking it back to the government and saying, look, how can we create a collaboration where the R&D fund is also, bases the risk sharing, right? So where industry, government, everyone comes together and creates a pool fund, which is kind of ring fenced from the overall balance sheet of whoever is taking that initiative. And then what are the institutional structures and how will this get matured and maybe brought out in the market, who owns the patent. So some of these things, if government can look at, maybe it'll be a good start in terms of the R&D expenditure happening, especially in where you have many competitive technologies at the same time.
Absolutely.
So one last question, I think there is some time left for the audience question. Any one wish list, because he's already spoken about why the standardization should be there, and Janendra, you had some thoughts on the recent battery safety norms, and I'm sure others also. So any one wish list that you want government to?
My wish list, or coming from the industry wish list, is that the OEMs should be consulted before announcing any norm. That's what the wish list is, because I'll just take 30 seconds more. The norms which have come, effective 1st October, they are going to be applicable. Now, to get the battery tested on those parameters, if you follow the protocol, process, everything, is going to take 12 to 14 months. And how can we roll out the EV from our manufacturing facility on 1st of October? Because my battery will not be meeting those norms. Even if it meets, it's not certified. So it's $1 million question that is now every OEM is terrified. What's going to happen from 1st October? If government does not give us leverage, we cannot roll out the vehicle, because those testing parameters, all those parameters that they have listed, almost 12 to 14 months, take my word.
Dev, your thoughts? And then Rajaram.
No, I completely agree. I think there has to be much more deeper, deliberations with industry and develop a realistic and achievable roadmap. That is one. And secondly, on the financing side, see, banks are still not financing. And when you have 73% of the banks owned by the state, it is the government has to make the state-owned banks come up for financing of these vehicles. Because we have 95% vehicles sold through financing in this country. So how can you sell? And how can it be affordable when you have 20% interest rate? So that is where I think something needs to be done. It's time.
Okay, sure. So thank you so much. We have some time for audience questions now.
Yeah, we can take 2 questions. So any question from the audience? Okay then. Thank you so much everyone. I request you please